Hey everybody, I'm Rosalind, your friendly neighborhood landlord. Don't worry, I won't bite. Hey everybody, I'm Rosalind Resnick, your friendly neighborhood landlord, a place where landlords and tenants can talk about issues, break down barriers, and hopefully find some peace in this crazy world of ours. Welcome to the show. So today my guest is my tenant Mike, who you've been my tenant I guess for like a year and a half now, in one of my historic buildings that I own in the West Village. And Mike, first of all, I've got to say that you are hands down one of the best, if not the best, tenants that I've ever had. I've never had a tenant who is like so on top of everything, who never complains, who fixes things before I know that they're even broken. Like, how do you do that?
I'll take that as an intro. It's an award I'll wear as a badge of honor. It's great to be on here with you. How do I do it? So, you own the building. I loved it immediately when I walked in. And I'm living there. If there's a problem or an issue that comes up and it's easier for me to address or faster for me to address while I'm there, I want to be able to do it, and I can, because ultimately it's my problem that I'm living with. But if it's something that I can't, knock on wood, we haven't had those discussions yet. Obviously I would need you as the landlord to help me address it.
Right, and Mike, what I'm saying is, I'm sure you remember the first day that we met, because I'm not only the landlord, I act as my own rental broker, so I find my own tenants. And I know I've told you this story, but there were three people. I mean, the market was just so hot like a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. There was actually a bidding war on the apartment that you moved into, and there were three people who wanted your apartment. Right? It was you, it was this young woman from California who'd never lived in New York before, and then there was a couple, and they had like two really huge desks, and because it was still like we were just heading out of COVID, they both wanted to work from home, and then, so I interviewed each of them briefly, and everybody was offering the same price, which was great. And then I talked to you, and you told me about not just you were a banker, you were in private equity, just like most of my tenants these days, but you also talked about how during COVID you bought, I think it was like 2 or 3 beach bungalows down the Jersey Shore, and you renovated them yourself. And I'm like, oh my God, this is the guy. So tell me about, I mean, it's very rare, because like these apartments I own in the West Village, they're pretty expensive, and I'm not going to say like how much rent you're paying, but long story short, not too many people can afford to live in an apartment like yours. But in addition to being a banker, you're also a roll up your sleeves kind of guy who, like, you bought your own buildings down the shore, you renovated them, you're renting them out, and now you're also a landlord. I mean, so this is what I think is so amazing.
Well, thank you for the compliment there in the end. So I think, a lot of questions there. I think when we first met, finding an apartment in New York is a zoo. It's a difficult thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Finding an apartment in New York in the West Village is a zoo. Finding an apartment in New York in the West Village with air conditioning that doesn't sound like a passing Boeing 747 is a zoo times 10. And then you add the fact that, it's a beautiful historic building and extremely well maintained. I remember that I saw your listing on Street Easy at 6 o'clock in the morning, and we were emailing by, 6:30, 7 a.m., and I knew that I wanted the place.
Right, because I never turn off my phone. And that
well,
you know that I do my own management as well with my trusty team of people in New York. But Mike, so let me tell you something. So just to go back to, like, you've been a tenant, you're currently a landlord. I mean, I guess like most tenants, they've never been a landlord before. So they don't understand what people like me as a landlord go through. And that's what I think makes you such a great tenant. So, like, I mean, have you, like, what has been your personal experience?
Yeah. So, my story, I grew up in the suburbs of Philadelphia, spent all of my life, at least that I remember, spending summers at the Jersey Shore. I have 2 siblings, 3 or 4 aunts and uncles, and between the whole family, there's about 10 different places, and we get together there for holidays, birthday parties, whatever, on a yearly basis. So I
Okay.
always knew at some point, I would want to have a place in our town as Sea Isle City, New Jersey. Moving to New York after graduating college, working in finance, paying New York City rent, I also knew that, as crazy as it sounds, beachfront property at the Jersey Shore is arguably the same price as some places in New York, but 3 or 4 times the size. It
Okay.
also was a place that I knew that I wanted to end up, and did not know how long I would be in New York, whether I wanted to raise a family in New York, didn't really want to address any of those questions. So an opportunity came up, and ultimately I bought 2 condos in a 4-unit building in 2018, and then subsequently in 2020. And that started my voyage into being a landlord. What
So,
I've learned throughout that process. Oh, sorry.
no, no, Mike, I was going to say, but it must be tough for you because you live in New York, you work in New York, you're in private equity. I mean, you're working like an animal, probably 10, 12 hours a day. So how do you manage to also be a landlord on the Jersey Shore?
So similar to what you said, my phone's always on. And
Okay.
the way that I think about it is, when a tenant has a problem, so they clog a toilet or there's an electrical issue, they're dealing with it. It's my property. It could damage. It can affect their willingness or interest to continue to pay rent. And ultimately, it's something that I need to solve. For me, being in Manhattan, maybe in an office, maybe working, or it's the middle of the night, I'm asleep, or I'm at a bar. In order to address that problem, I need to drive 142 miles, 2 tanks of gas, $80 in tolls,
Yeah, but there's just no,
or
right.
find a team that can help.
Okay.
And, what I've done over the years is have very close relationship with plumbers, electricians, cleaning people who I've built relationships with, trust, know how to get into the property, and can help solve those problems, and, deliver the quality of service that I would like to provide to tenants, and also keep them paying rent. I would say I made every mistake. When I first bought a place, I was 25, and my mom, who I'm very close to, who's retired, she would say, I'll clean for you. I don't mind. I love you. I want to help you. I made the mistake of saying, sure, Mom, you could do it. She asked me 100 times. I kind of gave in. A tenant complained it wasn't clean enough.
Wait,
And
hold on a second.
yeah,
The
yeah.
tenant complained about your mom's cleaning. That's unbelievable.
Well, they didn't know it was my mom. And, my mom didn't know the expectations of, cleaning for a tenant who was paying, a good amount of rent, staying there for, this was a weekly rental in the month of August. And I knew in the back of my mind I had cleaning people. My mom just continued to ask. I knew I shouldn't have did it, but I let her do the cleaning. And I
Okay.
appreciated it, but it was a difficult conversation and a difficult Airbnb review to have with my mom.
Well,
And we both learned a lesson that, you need to have the right people, need to build relationships with them, don't mix family and personal, and, deliver quality and responsiveness that, the tenants expect and are paying for.
but Mike, but let me ask you though. I mean, let's
Yeah.
say, let's say, you're in a meeting, I mean, you handle major deals and transactions and, you're in a conference room on Wall Street filled with bankers and then you get a text from a tenant saying, my toilet is clogged, right? Or my light bulb is out or I saw a rat or I mean, how do you handle that?
Uh, Great question. I would think maybe you think similarly. I mean, I hope the situation is not bad, meaning someone's safety is threatened, or there's an
Right.
electrical issue, or there's a survival issue. But to me, it's, I don't want to say entertaining, but the meeting is what I do full time. I enjoy my job, love everything about it. But, the landlord duties have become a little bit of, um, an interest or a hobby. I hope the problem isn't bad. Sometimes it is, but when it's not, it's something I can solve. It's easy to, reach out to the right people, get the help, have it addressed pretty quickly. And ultimately, the problems that can happen in a, 3-bedroom, 2-bath condo on the water at the Jersey Shore, there's not that much that can go wrong. There's utility systems, there's cleanliness, and then there's safety. Safety, you inspect annually and pray that nothing goes wrong, and you're usually right. Utilities and cosmetic issues, I enjoy addressing those quickly. It's having the right people who support me, who can help. And if I get a text and Memorial Day to Labor Day, it happens weekly that there's a problem. I usually look and say, I'll address this immediately. I'll have someone over to help. This happened at the end of August where, one of my tenants, they broke the bed frame. It was an older one. I kind of knew I had to replace it when they were moving out in September, but it happened before they moved out. My response, quickly ordered another one on Amazon. It was going to be delivered that Friday. The day that I got the text was on Thursday. Got down there quickly. I was already heading there for the weekend, helped them replace it. They were very happy. It was a 24-hour response time. And, for me, I enjoy thinking about it, providing a solution, solving that problem, but it's also a place I want to be. It's the Jersey Shore. I have friends and family there. It's an enjoyable environment. Doing that drive, addressing a problem, there's a little bit of money and economic incentive in it for me, but also I'm not going to a place I don't ordinarily want to be.
Right, and you know what? I feel the same way about the West Village because I know that, I actually, I recently moved to Alexandria, Virginia, which is just south of D.C. because that's where my younger daughter decided to work and live. But the long story short is, people have asked me over the years, like, hey, Rosalind, why don't you, shouldn't you diversify, right? Like, why have all of your buildings in New York and the West Village? And, why not buy some condos in Florida? Why not buy some single family buildings in Las Vegas or wherever? I mean, for me, like, all real estate is local. And one of the secrets to my success is, it's not just me. As you know, like, it's Jennifer, my property manager, Lorenzo, my handyman, Tiger, my super, my plumber, my electrician. I have a whole team of people. And without them, there's no way I could run my business.
100%.
And
couldn't agree more. I'm in New York. I'm at work all day. At the end of the day, my landlord duties are part-time. My full-time job is my full-time job. My team doesn't deserve, and that I work with on a full-time basis doesn't deserve and wouldn't accept, a split responsibility. And, I wouldn't be able to do that without, the team of help that obviously has a cost associated with it that I have in Sea Isle locally who can address major issues that I'm not able to at the time.
But having said that, Mike, because you only own a couple of properties, I'm assuming that you're acting as your own property manager, right?
Correct.
So when there's a problem, tenants, they call you, they text you.
Correct. There's a problem, I'm the guy. There's a lease that needs to be drafted. Well, I know that you do it as well, but yeah. I do that.
Now, here's luckily, Mike, do you find your own tenants? Sorry to interrupt you there. Do you actually look for your own tenants, or do you have a broker who does that?
I do have an agreement with a broker, but I've never taken a tenant from them. So I find my own. Usually through word of mouth. The first few, so in 2018 when I first started, I used Airbnb. And that was more weekly, weekends in the off season. The longest I ever did on Airbnb was a month. And then very quickly I was introduced to two cousins and their spouses who wanted to rent one of the places and share it together. They're from the Philadelphia area, and since then, that was 2020, so 4 years, but now 2 properties. All of the turnover has been word of mouth, people who are friends and family of mine or friends and family of current or former tenants.
Okay, so that makes it a lot easier. So you're renting to people that you know or people who know people.
Correct. I try to limit people that I know personally. I would rather have a professional relationship with a tenant who then refers me to one of their friends or family than my personal friends or family. It's an economic decision. There could be an issue. You never know what your tenant's definition of perfect is and exactly what they want. And if it's not what they want, they're very communicative. And I try not to mix that with personal relationships. But I've had success in that so far that it hasn't been an issue.
Okay, great. So listen, I know we've both got to go here, but thank you so much for, sharing your experience and all these great tips. So, what would you say, what are the 3 tips, the three pieces of advice that you would give to anybody who's considering going out there and buying and operating rental property?
Yeah, I think, one, it's not a full-time job unless you have the scale of properties that you do, but it doesn't need to be. But it is certainly a 24/7 responsibility. At any point in time, you could be contacted with an issue or a problem that comes up. And even if you do have a firm that you're working with, you're ultimately the responsible party, and you'll need to make those decisions and take the risk. Exactly. Second, that sounds like both of us have had tremendous success in this. Find a place where you enjoy being, you don't mind going to, for a lot of different reasons. One, it's just a little bit more convenient. But 2, those are the markets that you tend to understand what the tenant is looking for. Mm-hmm. The types of amenities, the cost they're willing to spend, any seasonality. I think that to me, and it sounds like to you, has been tremendously successful. And, third is that being responsive is ultimately the most important responsibility. If your tenant has an issue, many times it can be fixed over a day or 2 or even a week. But what's important is having someone there, whether it's you or someone you're contracted with, to respond, make them understand that their concerns are understood and will be addressed at the appropriate time.
Exactly. Well, Mike, thank you so much for joining me on the show. And again, thank you again for being such a great tenant, and now I could see also such a great landlord. I'll talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon. Thank you for having me.